Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is climbing a mountain covered in fog. No rope, no guide, no crowd cheering from below. That person might be you. And the strange part is, the silence around you is not a punishment, it is the beginning of something most people will never understand. Carl Jung once wrote that every rebirth begins with dissolution, that before anything new can emerge, the old version of you must quietly fall apart. So if your world feels heavy and still, stay with me, because what comes next could change the way you see everything you have been going through. Loneliness is the first door, and almost everyone tries to walk past it. The conversations that once made you laugh now feel hollow. The people who used to walk beside you seem to drift into a fog of their own. On the surface, nothing has changed, your routine, your face, your voice, but something beneath it all is shifting. Most people interpret this as failure, as proof that something went wrong. Jung saw it differently. He called it the night sea journey, the dark passage every soul must cross before it reaches deeper ground. This kind of solitude is not about empty rooms or unanswered calls. It is the sensation of standing in a crowd and feeling like you speak a language no one around you recognizes anymore. Your smile stays, your words keep flowing, but deep inside, a separation is happening, slow and undeniable. The mask you wore to belong is peeling away, and what remains underneath is raw, unfamiliar, and closer to the truth than anything you have known before. Jung called this mask the persona, the carefully constructed face we present to the world, and he believed that real maturity only begins when that mask starts to crack. A woman I once heard about went through a devastating divorce and found herself sitting in a silent apartment for the first time in decades. Instead of filling the void with distractions, she sat with it, 5 minutes at first, then hours. She cooked meals for one, journaled without an audience, and faced questions she had spent years avoiding. Months later, she said the silence was no longer her enemy. It became the only place where she could finally hear herself. Jung would call that the meeting with the self, the moment you stopped running and begin the slow walk home. Picture an oak tree in the dead of winter, stripped of every leaf, standing alone against a cold wind. No color, no blossoms, no admiration from anyone passing by. But beneath the frozen ground, its roots are pushing deeper, silently preparing for a spring no one else can see yet. Your lonely season works the same way, invisible on the outside, transformative underneath. If you stay patient enough, if you refuse to abandon yourself in the cold, the bloom will come. Once you learn to stand inside that silence, a second realization follows. What drains you is not the absence of people. It is the constant hope that someone else will make the emptiness go away. Jung described it clearly. Loneliness does not come from having no one around you. It comes from being unable to share the things that matter most. When your sense of peace depends on another person's response, every unanswered message becomes a crisis. Every withdrawn glance becomes evidence that you are not enough. That is not love, that is emotional dependency, and it keeps you chained to a version of yourself that cannot grow. A woman in a therapy group once confessed she would check her phone dozens of times an hour, spiraling into panic whenever her partner stayed quiet. After months of work, she discovered the fear had nothing to do with him. It traced back to a childhood where her sadness was met with dismissal. Her unconscious had learned early that her feelings were a burden, and she spent her adult life searching for someone to prove otherwise. Jung called this emotional projection, the habit of using other people as mirrors to measure your worth. When they reflect warmth, you feel alive. When they turn away, you vanish. Breaking free from that cycle starts with one small act, placing your hand on your own chest when the sadness rises and whispering 3 words, "I am here." That gesture, quiet as it is, marks the birth of emotional independence, the stage where you stop merging with the world and begin to stand as a whole person on your own. Someone who has learned to comfort themselves does not need constant reassurance. They can sit alone in a cafe, drink their coffee slowly, and feel genuinely complete. That is not coldness, that is the highest form of freedom. Freedom from the need to be confirmed by anyone outside of you. The third shift is subtle but powerful. It is the moment you stop complaining. Every complaint reinforces a hidden belief that you are powerless, that something outside of you holds the keys to your life. Jung called it the shadow of self-pity, the part of the ego that asks, "Why me?" as if the universe owes it an explanation. But the real question was never, "Why me?" It was always, "What can I do with this?" Complaining feels productive, it imitates action, but it keeps you perfectly still. A stone at the bottom of a river gets battered by the current day after day, yet over time, that same force polishes it into something smooth and luminous. Life works the same way. It will not pause because you protest, but if you endure the current instead of cursing it, you will emerge refined in ways you never expected. A woman once told me she spent 6 months retelling the story of her friend's betrayal to anyone who would listen. One night she wrote in her journal, "If no one were here to hear this, would I still tell it?" The answer was no. The next morning, she stopped narrating the wound and started writing about what she wanted to build. Stopping complaint does not mean denying pain. It means refusing to live inside it. You can grieve, you can ache, you can feel the full weight of disappointment, but instead of rehearsing the wound, you channel that raw energy into building something that did not exist before. If you're still here, if these words are reaching something real inside you, take a moment and subscribe to this channel. Not because I'm asking, but because showing up for content like this, content that challenges you to grow, is itself an act of choosing yourself. One click, and you are telling the universe you are ready for what comes next. The fourth lesson arrives quietly. It is the test of being unseen. You do the work, you show up every day, you pour everything into your path, and the world stays silent. No praise, no acknowledgement, no witness. This is where most people surrender, not from exhaustion, but from invisibility. Jung once said the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and that terror is what makes external validation so addictive. A woman I spoke with spent years being the last person in her office every night, yet when recognition came, it always landed on someone else. She felt invisible until she made a decision. She stopped working to be seen and started working to see herself. After every completed project, she wrote down what she had done well and rewarded herself with a quiet afternoon, a good book, a slow walk. She discovered that external approval fades within minutes, but self-recognition lasts for days. That is the shift from the dependent ego to the self, the mature center of consciousness Jung spent his life describing. When you validate your own progress, you stop chasing reflections in other people's eyes and begin to carry your own light wherever you go. The fifth transformation is learning to rise quickly after a fall. Even after building inner strength, life will knock you down again, often at the exact moment you believed you had outgrown collapse. Jung taught that those falls are not punishment, they are revelation. They expose the parts of you still waiting to be healed. A woman who lost her business to betrayal spent months drowning in guilt until her therapist asked one question: "If this is not an ending, but a lesson, what is it teaching you?" She paused and answered, "Maybe I never truly listened to my intuition." From that day, she began journaling, not to vent, but to learn. A year later, she reopened her company, smaller but steadier, and said falling no longer frightened her because every collapse made her more honest with herself.
The phoenix does not fear the fire. It dives in willingly because what burns away was never the real bird, only the shell that had finished its purpose. Regret will freeze you, but a single step forward activates something powerful in the brain, a shift from cortisol to dopamine, from paralysis to possibility. The sixth principle is acting without waiting for inspiration. Discipline, not motivation, is what carries you across the longest stretches. Jung wrote that will is the energy capable of reorganizing the entire psyche, and when you act from will rather than mood, you transcend the small ego and align with something far greater. A single mother working 2 jobs once told me she had lost every trace of passion. Then one night, her son asked what happened to her dream, and something inside her cracked open. She began waking 15 minutes earlier to read, writing 3 goals each morning, saving every spare dollar. A year later, she opened a small bakery, alone, unsupported, unencouraged, but still standing. She learned that willpower is not a feeling, it is a decision to continue, even when your heart feels like stone, even when every fiber of your body wants to quit. Angela Duckworth spent years proving this through research. The people who achieve extraordinary things are not the most talented. They are the ones who keep moving long after enthusiasm disappears and the applause stops. The seventh and final truth is the one that sets everything free. No one will ever fully understand the depth of what you have walked through, and that is not a tragedy, it is a liberation. Jung wrote that your visions will become clear only when you look into your own heart. A young painter once abandoned the city after years of creating for trends and approval. She rented a small house by a lake, cut off all contact, and painted only what her soul wanted to express. When she returned, a gallery in Berlin discovered her new work and offered an exhibition. She said that when she stopped trying to be seen, people finally began to see her. That is the paradox at the center of this entire journey. When you stop searching outside, you become a center of gravity that draws the right things toward you. Like a lighthouse on a dark shore, you do not shout, you do not chase, you simply stand and shine, and those who need your light will find it on their own. The energy you once spent begging to be noticed transforms into a quiet magnetism that words could never manufacture. This path was never about becoming unbreakable. It was always about becoming authentic, honest with your fears, steady in your will, and faithful to the quiet flame inside you. When you stop waiting to be saved, you discover you were never weak. You simply had not yet seen how strong you already are. The strength was always there, buried under layers of doubt and the noise of seeking approval from a world that was never designed to give it freely. If something in these words stirred a place inside you that rarely gets touched, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And stay close, because this journey of becoming yourself, steady, clear, and free, has only just begun.